I'm joined now by James George Jatras. He's the Deputy Director of the American Institute in Ukraine. Why now, do you think?
I think the answer to the question of the timing has to do with the what. What is this really for? And there are two completely different narratives here. There are people saying this is for suppressing internal dissent. Maybe there'll be riots. Maybe the sanctions will kick in and people become discontented, or maybe something to do with the elections for the parliament coming up in September. The government's line is this is for terrorism, organized crime, and the other security threats. And I think the second part is somewhat more believable. To start with, look at the results of the Syrian war, the Russian intervention. We had uncovered in Volgograd just the other day an ISIS-connected cell that was discovered because of a Russian passport, found in an ISIS-captured town, captured by the Syrian Kurdish forces. So I think they are genuinely concerned that as the region around them changes, and especially as the Syrian war, I think, goes against the jihadists, a lot of these people are going to be coming back, and they're going to have a big mess on their hands. It's
similar to what the United States, once you get into the region and you start to get involved, as Russia is now, there are people who have resentments over that sort of thing, and clearly they can come back. But Russia is not a country that is immune to terrorism. It's seen quite a bit of it in the past. Of course, we think of the Moscow theater attack, Beslan, and there's been a lot of talk about Dagestan as being a region for jihadists. Talk to me, if you would, just kind of talk through the history, where Moscow's been, Russia, and talk to us about Dagestan, too.
Well, Dagestan is one of the areas in the North Caucasus, like Chechnya, which, of course, has been the big focus for a couple of decades now. These are majority Muslim areas in the North Caucasus. There are several different nationalities that live there. But this is broader than that now, and I think the Russians are concerned, looking at what happened in Brussels, looking at what happened in Paris, that this jihadist threat is truly an international threat. The guy who was from Volgograd that was connected to that cell there, he wasn't a Chechen, he wasn't Dagestani, he was a Russian who had converted to Islam. And it's the same phenomenon you see in European countries, frankly, that people are concerned about here in the United States as well. So I think the Russians are looking at it with a broader perspective.
What about the organized crime piece of this? Because they say they're going after that as well. Is that just an afterthought, or is that also a big piece of this?
You know, I have trouble figuring out exactly where that fits in. I mean, you know, sure, there's a lot of organized crime in Russia. There isn't a lot of places. Maybe they're thinking in terms of perhaps what's going to happen in Ukraine in the near future as well. Remember, that's a very important neighbor to them. You know, at some point, we keep talking about Ukraine is becoming a failed state. Eventually, becomes. And there is a lot of corruption, a lot of organized crime in Ukraine as well. Maybe they are looking at, but I think that's a little farther out. I don't think that's the main focus.
Armenia, Azerbaijan, now there's the flare-up there as well. Is that a concern as well?
It's a huge concern. Armenia is a very close ally of Russia. It is part of the Eurasian Economic Union. Let's keep in mind that Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, is himself an Armenian. It's a real question, what prompted this flare-up? The attack clearly came from the Azeri side. Now, the Azeris are very close to the Turks, and we know about the problems between Turkey and Russia now. Was this somehow Mr. Erdogan's way of slapping back at Mr. Putin for his humiliation in Syria? In any case, I think the Russians have a lot of incentive to try to keep this tamped down if they can. Azerbaijan can't ignore its relationship with Russia either, even though it's more primarily oriented toward Turkey.
Jim Jatras, always a pleasure having you on the broadcast. Thanks so much for coming in.